Good day. I'm Pat Rooney, and this is the next episode of Catch the Golden Ring. I'm going to deviate today a bit because when I go to the gym, me being at 86, the oldest guy in the gym, all the young guys seem to be day traders, and all they talk about is SpaceX with me because they know I spent 25 years on Wall Street. Perhaps I know something about it. Well, what I do know is I know about IPOs since I've done many of them. And SpaceX in the last 30 days did an IPO, raising, I believe, $70 billion plus on a pre-money market cap or pre-IPO priced market cap of $1.7 trillion. And they have a very large, better than a $2 trillion market cap as they traded in the aftermarket. However, you have to know how IPOs work. So what happens in this case, Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley and other bankers, but there's a lead book runner, let's call it, that is putting together all the orders. So what they do is they accumulate orders from buyers and they fill the book, but at the same time what they're doing is they're getting aftermarket orders. So if the deal is coming at $135 a share, I'm also getting orders from the same buyers at $150 a share. Now who's getting the stock? Well, the institutions are getting the stock, and in there I include the hedge funds. And why do they get the stock? Even though the investment bankers know they're gonna flip the stock on day one, that's because they're the best customers. And why are they the best customers? Is because before and after the IPO, they're buying things like AT&T and IBM, 100,000 shares there, another 100,000 shares here. And of course, they're selling in a few days because they're creating activity, which just shows they're super good customers, therefore they get big allocations. The little guys, they get very little, but they do put in aftermarket orders. And so because they're enthralled with Mars and with Elon Musk, so therefore the book is not only filled with the 500 million shares that are being sold, it's also being filled with 500 million shares that are in the aftermarket. So now the investment bankers know where this stock is going to open. They also know how they're going to fill the orders. They also know that the hedge funds, they're always sellers on day one because they will then take and they will sell in the aftermarket. They will sell to the retail players. They will then expect that the stock will come off, which it will if there's no demand. And with SpaceX, they only sold 4% of the capitalization, which is a very small piece of the company. And therefore, you're not going to make a long-term investment decision on that because the players that own 96% of the stock are Elon Musk with I believe a 41% holding, and then the rest are early stage institutional investors that have bought, and they're generally locked up. They might have what are called piggyback registration rights, which means they piggyback on the top of future offerings, or they have holding requirements that they sign up for, and that's basically how it works. Now, the thing that's really, however, drives where the future of the stock's going to trade is to have very smart investment bankers that are saying, hey, this was a nice ticket that we wrote here, doing a $70 billion or $75 billion offering, but let's convince Elon that he should do a secondary and raise some additional capital, but give liquidity to some of the institutional holders. And at that point, what we'll do is we'll get them to lock up better so they're not exercising their rights to get liquidity by riding off of another offering that is not planned, or that they're putting pressure on to do, or they're selling in the aftermarket at whatever time they can get free. So, okay, so that's happening, and let's say they do another offering sometime in the future for $100 or $200 billion. Now you're in a better position to have a stabilized market going into the future. The other thing that, in my opinion, and by the way, everything I'm saying, I know nothing, I'm speculating that this is what's happening behind the scenes, because this is what always happens behind the scenes. The other thing will be that Starship is the thing that excites the retail guys going to Mars, etc., but it's going to take a whole lot of money. So there will be an investment banker that says, hey, why don't we raise a couple of $100 billion for Starship specifically? Maybe we can sell 10 or 20% of the company and get them their own money, with SpaceX still owning 80 or 90%. However, they no longer have a requirement to spend money from the treasury to develop Mars. Now you really have a stabilized situation. Then you have the thing that really is the most important in the company right today, which is Starlink. And Starlink is an internet provider, and they have all kinds of defense contracts and deal with communications globally. But they have 10,000 satellites up in the sky, and the nearest competitor has 300 or 400. I mean, it's not even the same ballgame. And then you have the developing technology where you can communicate directly from your telephone to the satellite. Now, once you can do that, then basically you don't have all these towers, etc., and infrastructure that Verizon has, and AT&T and T-Mobile. Well, what if Starlink then decides that they should be a telecommunications company? Well, the best way to do that, just do the comparative analysis of a $2 trillion, $3 trillion market capitalization versus Verizon at 200 or 200 billion plus market capitalization, and something like China Telephone with a $300 billion market capitalization. Now, with that big market cap, of course, Elon could very easily be convinced, and there's speculation that they're talking about it, make an acquisition of something like T-Mobile. So that could happen, and then they could pick off companies throughout Africa, South America, and cherry pick outside the major market before they move into the major market. And now they become the largest factor in dealing directly with the 7 billion people on the planet that have a smartphone, which is really the overriding thing that is driving all markets and will in the future. And we will talk again at some time in the future about the story of equity crowdfunding and how you go after those 7 billion people and own the market of capital formation into the future. So that's my take on the future and SpaceX. Good day.